At this time, please join me in welcoming to the stage Todd Weingeroff, Regional Vice President for AFCEA's Central Europe Region Southwest, Lieutenant Colonel Philip Alvarez, Vice President, AFCEA Kaiserslautern Chapter, Ken Robertson, AFCEA Kaiserslautern Chapter Education Committee Chair, AFCEA President and CEO Bob Shea, and Tina Jordan, Vice President for Membership, AFCEA International.
So thank you for having us. We're honored to be here. We're actually, even with the challenges of COVID overseas, the Kaiserslautern chapter was able to exceed our fundraising goals for the year, and we wanted to give back. So we're honored to be able to present a check back to the AFCEA Education Fund for $10,000 on behalf of the Kaiserslautern chapter. Thank you.
Well, that is a welcome surprise, so thank you very much to everyone over there in the Kaiserslautern chair, Todd and everybody else. Certainly appreciate that. It just goes to show that you can make money in Europe. Well, good morning, everyone, and I hope you had a great night at the technology reception, and then you were out networking with your colleagues and friends, and I also hope you had a productive morning with our industry partners and attending this morning's theater sessions, which were going strong when I came down here earlier this morning, and I got a chance to stick my head in on some really pertinent and relevant topics out there that that are affecting the way we as a nation put together our capabilities, and not just as a nation, but also as our coalition partners. A special thanks to Forescout and Carasoft for providing this morning's coffee. I certainly appreciate it, particularly when you're over here early in the morning and some of the hotels are not providing the capabilities that we normally expect because of the COVID and the impact on their employment. We had a great day yesterday. I'm not going to go through everything that happened, but what I would like to do is I would kind of like to reach back to the panel set or the fireside chat we had late yesterday afternoon with Frank DeSoto from Auburn University, as well as Chris Inglis, and it was really a very candid discussion, and it's the type of thing that will, I'm sure, provoke a lot of ideas, a lot of discussion as we go forward in the challenges that we face with the competition that we as a nation have to deal with. And I think I would point out that I had a little bit of a discussion with Chris Inglis beforehand, and I think you may recognize the fact that he has said not only does he support what's going on with CERTS in Augusta on the 25th to the 27th of January, but he also wants to champion it. So I think it just shows you the importance that he, as the Director of Cyber for the United States government, it places on the event that we will be conducting down there in Fort Gordon. So I hope we had a chance for all of you to attend down there. There'll be more information forthcoming before too long. As we move into the second day, I'd like to once again thank our industry partners who have supported this symposium and who, in their exhibits and presentation solutions that advance the theme of the symposium, are helping to provide solutions out there to deal with the challenges that are being faced by DISA as well as the other services. Without their support, events like this couldn't possibly happen. So again, I want to thank you, and please consult the AFCEA 365 app or your show guide for the full list of sponsors that are out there. Make sure you take time to visit their booths. They certainly appreciate it. And I think that's enough that I'll say about that. But the list of the booths is on the app as well as in the handout that you may have. We noted yesterday that Signal has launched this year's Cyber Edge Writing Contest. I want to highlight that again. With a theme of emerging technologies in the cyber realm. This program is generously supported by Mantech, And again, I want to remind everyone that there is a first place prize. There are 3 prizes. First place prize is $5,000, and then I think second is $2,500 down to $1,000. So not only do you get to write and to share your ideas, but you get a chance to be rewarded for that as we go forward. The best 3 articles, as I said, will win monetary prizes. And they'll be published in Signal Magazine and Signal Media. And for the details, if you go to afcia.org and find the link for the Cyber Edge Writing Contest. That's the Cyber Edge Writing Contest under the Resources Navigation tab, and you'll find the information that is out there. And once again, we encourage all of you, if you're not members, to become members. As I mentioned yesterday, doctors have the AMA, dentists the ADA, and lawyers the ABA, and we'd like to think that you, our friends and our partners out there, have AFCEA. So again, we would welcome you with open arms, and we welcome any thoughts and ideas that you may have about not only making this conference better and stronger, but any other conferences or any other capabilities that we may be providing. So we look forward to that. This morning's first session is a presentation from cyber, defensive cyber, and cyber operations against the continuous threats that we're facing today. And it's going to be given by Lieutenant General John Morrison, the Army G6, who's a gentleman that I've known for a long time. And I'll tell you, we're lucky to have him in his position in the United States Army and the headquarters. Not only that, but contributing to even the joint solutions that go forward. He assumed his current duties in August of 2020. He's not going to throw me off the stage this time. He is a signal officer by trade, but with a deep knowledge of cyber and the importance of both cyber and the evolving network environment as we experience our everyday business. His focus from the date that he assumed his role as the Army G6 was to set the unified network and to enable positive command and control. You're hearing that? You heard General Skinner focus on command and control yesterday. Man, that's one of the slap the table, kick your feet up. You better get that message, because that's critical as the lifeblood of everything that we do. But how to enable positive command and control from the desk to the operational environment. In his own words, the G6 is about strategy, network architecture, and implementation of command, control, communication, cyber operations to the network. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant General John Morrison.
Is it okay if I stay down here? Fantastic. Appreciate it. Good morning. Hey, so first off, thank you to AFCEA and my great wingman, General Skinner, for the opportunity to come out and talk for a little bit this morning. I want to sort of hone our conversation, and I'm only going to talk for a few minutes because I really want to get to what's on your mind, and so we can have a dialogue. But I want to hone our conversation around defensive cyber operations, internal defense measures, and the need for change. So the Army released its Unified Network Plan about 3 weeks ago. It has 5 lines of effort. Ostensibly, they're set the unified network, that one mission warfighting network to enable joint operations in support of a multi-domain fight against a near-peer adversary. That is ostensibly the number one thing that we need to work through. So the first line of effort is set the unified network. Second line of effort is posture the force to conduct multi-domain operations. Third line of effort is the one I really want to focus on, is survivability and security, because that is foundational to everything that we're going to do on the network as we go into this new era and actually posture the Army to be a multi-domain capable force by 2028. We have to have a network that can survive in a contested and congested environment and that we can defend. Fourth line of effort is really getting after governance and policy reform, those things that have been artificial barriers that we just need to attack. My words, just need to attack and really get after how do we operationalize the entire network and not be bureaucratically based, but much more operationally focused. And then, excuse me, the last line of effort is really, what is sustainment of a network really mean? In a domain that changes by the minute, I would submit to you, what does sustainment really mean? And that line of effort really is a question more so than an action. We have to figure out, what does that really mean? But let's go back to the survivability and security of the network, DCO IDM. Here's my thesis. We have a lot of folks that are doing cybersecurity work, but we are not optimized across the entire joint force to conduct cybersecurity operations. And that's the part that we really need to start focusing our efforts on. So, how do we get after doing that? One is, we've got to make the appropriate personnel investments in a DoD framework that enhances not only the Army to conduct operations in the contested and congested environment that we're going to face in the future, but also the joint force. Establishing roles and responsibilities on echelon from the brigade level all the way up to the global enterprise level that supports our strategic and operational capabilities, so that we have a common feel, common training, a common look, so that we can conduct DCO IDM with the people that actually own the network, our cybersecurity service providers, the terrain owners. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not using our cyber protection teams to conduct DCO IDM. But what we want to do is make sure that we've got a layered defensive posture that allows the terrain owners, those CSSPs that I just mentioned, with the requisite training, with the requisite capabilities, to actually defend the broader terrain and get CPTs back to doing what they should be doing, being very threat-focused and hunting on our networks to make sure that if an adversary happens to have gotten in, we now have somebody that is focused on that specific threat. We need to up the game of the folks that are conducting cybersecurity operations, and it is cybersecurity operations. We need to up their game from three perspectives. One is we've got to get the organizational design right. Two, we have to get the right capabilities into their hands. And three, we need to get the requisite training in place. If we do those three things, we can now up the game, and now you've got continuous cybersecurity operations being conducted. And right now, in all candor, we're a little fragmented in that. If you go into a tactical formation, you have one set of capabilities. You go into a strategic and operational capability or organization, you have a separate set. And the two don't necessarily merge. Yet the reality of it is, it's one unified network to support warfighting in a multi-domain environment. And so we've got an effort underway. It's the Unified Network Operations Requirements document that for the first time, we are going to have a requirement to have unified network operations, read DoD and Ops, operations, maintenance, security, and defense of the network, and it's going to go across all echelons so that we can get that common look and feel all the way from the tactical edge back to the strategic and operational levels. It's also going to allow us to do something else. It's going to allow us to put folks into a defensive overwatch position, and we will be able to take complexity away from the edge and put it at the appropriate echelon. Because in reality, what do we want our brigade combat teams doing? We want them maneuvering, we want them fighting. We don't want them doing data analytics on a cyber threat. But you may want that capability at the division level where they have time, where they can actually do that kind of analysis. You may want to move it all the way back to one of our regional cyber centers where they have lots of times. But again, it's that DoD and Ops framework, tactical all the way up to global, that we are putting into place with the appropriate roles and responsibilities on echelon. Talked about organizational design. Significant movement inside our Army to invest personnel into this DoDNOPS framework and making sure that we have regional cyber centers that are robust, that we have a global capability that is watching activity, threat informed, across the entire Army contribution to the joint network. Reinforcing down at the division level, putting additional cyber defenders in place. Again, it's all about being a terrain owner so you can secure your terrain. So significant reinvestment. A lot of training initiatives inside the Army that we need to continue to refine, both inside the schoolhouse down at Fort Gordon to up the game of our cyber defenders. But we need to expand on that. And we need to leverage some of the training initiatives that we put in place with our cyber operators, our 17 series, so we get even our cyber defenders into train, employ, train kind of model. I would submit to you, without putting this DoDNOPS framework into place, the reality of the unified network will be challenging because we will be fragmented from an operational perspective. And so that is why there's such tremendous energy inside the Army to get after this very, very complex problem. But again, it's about aligning the organizational design, it's about aligning the capabilities, and it's about aligning the training. And if we do that, we will get after the notion of the unified network because we'll crush the technical barriers that have been put into place because we have been fragmented over time. And nobody was evil. It's just the way that networks in general across the Department of Defense grew up. They grew up from the bottom up, quite frankly. But now is the time to make sure we level set that as we all transition to fighting in a multi-domain environment. So I'm going to pause there. I look forward to your questions. We can go any which way you want. But this is really about aligning all of our cyber defensive capabilities. So we get after that notion of the folks that own the terrain are doing that broader area defense. And we get our cyber protection teams back to being very, very threat focused and pinpointed on targets and hunting on our networks. And right now we're a little out of balance in some regards with that. I look forward to your questions. Or I'll just stand here.
All right. I know there's questions out there, so I've got the microphone here. You can come up. You have a chance to speak to General Morrison. You can either go back and tell your bosses I didn't talk to him, I had a chance to, or you can come up here and ask him the hard questions. He's ready to answer them. Who's first? All right. Just got to tease him out. You know that, John.
How do you do, sir?
Hey, sir, how are you?
As we approach everything that you described today about using the most advanced approaches to surface hunting, or to facilitate hunting to surface the enemy while he's operating in our networks, would you think that we have to integrate with Gabriel Nimbus, or should we push industry advanced technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, in side by side with Gabriel Nimbus?
That's an interesting question. My answer would be yes. And I'll give it to you from a couple perspectives. So Gabriel Nimbus is a great capability. We need to continue to build it and mature it because we are learning a lot. And it's not just inside the cyber domain, it's actually starting to influence some of the things that we're trying to do with broader technologies as well. But you bring up another interesting point. And to all of our industry partners here, we all need to be all in on where our department is heading. In all candor, I will tell you the ground is shifting under our feet when it comes to a threat perspective. And we've all got game in this. And so what we need is everybody thinking about how to solve these very, very complex challenges that we will face as we enter this era of being a multi-domain capable Army. And we really tried to mature JADC2. And so nobody's going to have a corner on the great ideas that are going to enable that to happen. But we need to get after it, and we need to get after it now. There is a sense of urgency to start really bringing these advanced capabilities to bear. So the more ideas that industry can bring in, the better off we will all be. They need to be able to integrate with the network that we have and the network that we want. That is one of the biggest things that we're learning as we go through Project Convergence out at Yuma Proving Grounds, is we have a network we have today. It's actually not bad, but it's not the network that we want for warfighting. So everybody bringing their ideas in and helping us move forward and showing us the art of the possible is going to be very, very important. I hope that answered your question, sir.
It did. Quick follow-up. Can we approach
Only get one, sir.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Could we follow up with Army Cyber Command, and is that the approach you would suggest for advanced ideas about that integration?
I would give you three vectors. You know, Army Cyber Command is obviously our operational arm for cyber. I would also encourage Army Futures Command, and then you can always use us in the G6 as an ingest as well.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we have a question from the email. What organization in the Army is responsible for innovation, R&D, in tools and techniques for problems you mentioned? Is it the organization like C5ISR Center or something else?
So the broader organization that's responsible for it is Army Futures Command. C5ISR Center is a sub-organization underneath Army Futures Command. But if you're looking for who is the modernization lead within the Army to get after all capabilities as we transform to multi-domain operations, it's Army Futures Command. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, you mentioned using the CPTs for their original intended purpose. My question is, how do we change from U.S. Cyber Command down the culture of deploying them for incident response and empower our CSSPs to do what they were designed, funded, and intended to do?
Yeah, great question. Don't take from my comments that we are not using CPTs for what they were originally designed to do. What I will tell you is, until we up the game of our cybersecurity service providers, there are more than a couple incidences that General Skinner and I could probably walk you through where they were doing the more traditional incident response. And we really want the terrain owners doing that level. And so it's that dichotomy as we mature ourselves from a defensive perspective that we're in right now. And so it's not really a culture thing. I would submit to you that U.S. Cyber Command would tell you the same thing that I'm saying, that we need to up the game of our CSSPs. I know from my time as chief that they're working on it and coming up with the readiness standards that we need for CSSPs for all the right reasons. We started those readiness standards with the Cyber Mission Force first. Now we need to go ahead and translate that to CSSPs. So I think there's a broad awareness of the framework that I sort of laid out. It's now we've got to start really maturing it as a joint force and moving it along. That pretty close, Bob? Okay.
Sir, good morning. Steve Calhoun, representing one of our industry partners. In JADC2, can you maybe give some insight? Certainly you mentioned Project Convergence, but is there an emerging command and control framework for JADC2, right? There's a lot of urgent call to be more integrated, more information dominance, and bringing together the various domains, specifically cyber. So a lot of players in this space right now. Everybody's trying to move to the sound of the guns as soon as possible, but how is that being command controlled? Joint Staff Cybercom Services, ABMS, Project Overmatch, Project Convergence. So where do we go to help understand that, if you can provide some clarity? I know it's all coming in quickly and fast, but any guidance would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sure. So you're right, there's a lot going on in this space. And it ties back to the sense of urgency that I mentioned to you previously. So the Joint Staff has stood up a JADC2 CFT that is leading the broader federated efforts across the entire Department of Defense. So from a single belly button, that would probably be the right inject point. Break. There's goodness in all the services attacking this at the same time. And there is a lot of collaboration going on amongst the services. For example, General McConville, our chief, and General Brown, the Air Force chief, have actually signed an MOA for collaborating as we do things like Project Convergence or the Air Force's ABMS efforts. Matter of fact, I was out at Yuma on Monday and watching Project Convergence. It is a joint exercise. Not just in name, I mean in practice. And you're seeing all the services out there actively contributing to make this all work. And so I'm actually very heartened by the amount of synergy that we're seeing across the services and at the Joint Staff level. Because again, there is a sense of urgency. I use terms like multi-domain operations. That's an Army term. That's the concept that we put into place. Joint all-domain operations. We nest very cleanly underneath that. And from a JADC2 perspective, the framework that we're putting into place also nests very, very cleanly. Because at the center of this is going to be the key to move from, quite frankly, a network-centric way of fighting to a data-centric way of fighting. And that's why the security of this is so, so important. Hence why I honed my discussion on DCO IDM. And so as we make that turn, we've all got to be working together because one-off solutions in this space, quite frankly, are a mission inhibitor, not a mission enhancement. I hope that answered your question, sir.
Sir, Rick Lipsy with Lipsy Cyber Consulting. Thank you very much for the laydown on things that are being done to improve security of information technology and networks. I'm curious about your assessment of the security of operational technology, securing weapon systems, and anything you may have learned in that regard from Project Convergence.
So I didn't learn much about operational technologies from Project Convergence. I have learned about operational technologies from more than a few assignments in this space. It is something that collectively we all need to be really working hard because anything that touches the network is an attack vector. And for years and years and years, across the department, matter of fact, I would say across the nation, we have not paid as much attention to our infrastructure that actually makes things go like we have needed to. And recent attacks that have been in the news that we're all very familiar with only highlight the need to bring some urgency to this challenging skill set or a challenging problem. Inside the Army, we are really focusing now on anything that touches the network, applying those same cybersecurity standards and practices to, because in the end, it's an IP-enabled device, and hence it's an attack vector. And so our G9 has actually stood up a shop that is going to be doing all the management of that. Dr. Iyer, who's the Army CIO, and I are making sure that we apply the same lens to our OT systems that we have to traditional IT. We have made some fairly significant progress. We still got a fairly long ways to go. Now, I will say this, but that's only on Army installations. I mean, there's the broader problem that we all need to be thinking about, and that's just infrastructure writ large. The infrastructure at the port of Savannah, as an example, is just as important as what we're doing at Fort Stewart in Georgia with the 3rd Infantry Division. And so we've really got to broaden our aperture as we start working through infrastructure writ large. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Morning, General.
Good morning, sir.
So you mentioned cyber terrain earlier.
You've got a lot of energy this morning.
Oh, do I? Well, I've had a couple cups of coffee. You mentioned cyber terrain earlier, and one of the things that I think we all recognize is the cyber terrain has really changed since the beginning of the pandemic, and the landscape is providing for a lot less visibility, right? People working from home and such. And my question to you is, as the Army looks to unify the enterprise and the tactical networks, how do you plan to provide DCO teams with the same level of visibility that they were used to having when most soldiers and civilians were working from inside the perimeter?
The biggest change I would submit to you is, for years and years and years, cybersecurity was an afterthought. It was something that was added on after a capability was developed. That's not what you're seeing today. You're seeing cybersecurity, and again, this is the notion of cybersecurity operations. Please don't take this as the old, information assurance kind of approach, because that's not what I am advocating. But you're seeing cybersecurity operations baked in on the front side. I will tell you that as we transitioned off of CVR, that we put in place very, very quickly at the start of the pandemic, as we deployed that infrastructure, we knew exactly how we were going to approach it because we baked in the cyber risk on the front end. And we knew that as we transitioned off of CVR, we were going to burn the infrastructure down. And as we transitioned to Army 365 and in the joint world into DoD 365, the conversations were all about what's the security wrapper we're putting around it? What are the tools we're putting in place? What is it? Essentially was the DoNOPS framework that I articulated. What's the organizations we're going to align against that defense? Made sure we all had a common view of how we were going to report if we had any challenges with it. And so the biggest difference is we're treating it like it is a weapons platform. And then we're baking in that defensive overwatch on the front end so that if we do have a challenge, at least we know exactly the methods and practices we're going to put into place to address it. I hope that answers your question, sir.
It does. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. General Morrison, JMU Duke Dogs.
Hooah.
Hooah.
Go Dukes.
Go Dukes. Okay, so...
do we have any other James Madison alumni in here? Y'all need to come up. We can get a picture after this.
Hey, hooah, hooah. Truthfully, it's my daughter that's there, but I'm one at heart. I now have JMU Duke Dogs in the family.
All your money went there.
Yeah, no, it's going to veterinary school now. So, okay. It's clear that our adversaries are attacking our organizations and our people in their official capacities and their roles. Is there anything that you can comment on, and how does DCO protect our people when they're not on duty? Because these adversaries don't see, a delineation. Is there anything that, you can help us understand?
Probably not publicly.
Okay.
I mean, I hate to do that.
Yeah.
I take your point, though, that in this very connected world, the threat is 24/7. There are many, many efforts to educate everybody across the force, whether they're seniors, all the way down to our juniors, of the threats that are out there and the things that can happen to them and the information that should and should not be disclosed. But you're spot on. It is something that we all need to be very, very conscious of. Whatever you do online, you become a target.
Hooah. Thanks.
Hey, morning, sir. Bill Sternhagen. I had the opportunity for a few years at the National Cyber Range to essentially be the event designer for most of the Army networks coming down there. I wonder if you could share with us where the Army's going with their range concepts and strategy. And we think we know that not going to be a part of the NCRC proper and EPOS, and just wondering what your thoughts are there and what the Army's going to do.
So I'm going to take it from a couple different approaches. So we are obviously, as the EA for the persistent training and cyber training environment, all in.
Correct.
On all things PCTE.
Yes, sir.
And I will tell you, both from my seat inside the Army to being the chief up at Cyber Command, what a tremendous game-changing capability. And so that is our main focus. In extending that out across the broader force, we want to work with U.S. Cyber Command to eventually broaden it out to our terrain owners so that they can be a part of the training range. Because again, it goes back to that train, employ, train model that I articulated earlier. And so PCTE, from a cyber-specific perspective, is where we're heading. What we are working our way through is how do you establish a training environment for our operational forces to actually conduct operations in a multi-domain environment. So significant work being done at the National Training Center and JRTC to bring that to fruition to where our forces are operating in that contested and congested environment, both from an electromagnetic spectrum perspective, from a cyber perspective, from a space perspective, bringing all the domains to bear, because that's the environment in which they're going to have to fight. The next step, and I would submit to you probably the most important, is how do we bring that training environment to home station so that we can do it below a NTC or a JRTC rotation. We can do it at home station. We can do it at the small unit level, because, you know, operating this contested and congested environment is absolutely fundamental for small unit tactics. And so we're going to have to bring that to bear, because what happens when a platoon or a company actually gets disconnected? What happens when there's jamming going on? We need to bring that realism to all of our training. And I know there's significant efforts inside the Combined Arms Center to be getting after that.
That sounds great, sir. I mean, I'm an Army IO guy, infantry. It's great to see you moving forward with an integrated approach, because it truly is that. There's so many holes, so many avenues, and so many ways to access the network. It's good to see, and you know, we're here industry. I think everybody here is willing to help you out with that, and look forward to making that happen for the Army. So
That's
good luck
great,
with
sir.
it. Thank you.
We have time for one final question.
All right, I win. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Fantastic insight. DHS, sibling organization to DoD, has defined about 16 critical infrastructure sectors. And some of your remarks about DCO, IDM kind of sparked a thought. I'd like to hear your feedback on how we share information with DHS, how we're working together to defend those critical infrastructure sectors, and if we need to do more or something different.
Well, we certainly need to do more. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, this is I would submit to you, a whole of nation challenge, not just a whole of government challenge. This is a whole of nation challenge to protect our intellectual property, to protect our infrastructure. And so the information sharing does need to continue to improve. Great strides have been made. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there have been some great strides made within the government to be doing that. You can walk up to U.S. Cyber Command and walk inside their JOC, and you're going to see a bunch of interagency partners that are there for information sharing. But we can always do better, and we need to flatten it. We also need to improve it with our industry partners. You know, if you think about the defense industrial base, that is where the nation's magic is. Quite frankly, that's where that intellectual property is. And so making sure that we secure that critical information from the time it is being thought about, and it's just a concept, to the time it's being turned into the actual capability that we might want to deploy inside our formations, to the time it's in our formations, we need to have that entire thread secured and protected. And that is going to take each and every one of us to make sure that we're putting those practices into place. So much work done, many actions taken, much more to do. But we all have to be all in on securing our networks. I hope that answered your question, sir. I lost you.
I got the final question for you. Marine Corps and the Army have spent a lot of time shoulder to shoulder over the last 2 decades. The Commandant is changing the focus of the Marine Corps and roles and missions in that regard. Again, there's going to be more focus on small units, as you talked about before. Oftentimes, the equipment that the Army and the Marine Corps have used, particularly in the land war side of what's been going on, has been common. didn't always start out that way, but it drove to that. Got any sense what the impact of the Marine Corps changing the roles and missions will have in terms of interoperability and working with the Army?
So what I would submit to you, sir, is I think the lines of communication between the Army and the Marine Corps are pretty tight. I mean that in a positive way. You know, it goes back to the notion, though, not necessarily on the capability side, but really the notion of what JADC2 is about, and that's the ability to exchange data and get it to the right place at the right time so that we can conduct operations at the time and place of our commander's choosing. That's the foundation of what all the services are working on together. That's the part that we've got to get right. The other capabilities, they can be slightly different, but if we get that foundational level right, we're going to be in a really good spot as a joint force. And so that's a big part of the efforts that are ongoing that we're working across the broader department. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, General Morrison. There's certainly a lot there to digest, and it certainly is a very challenging time. And I think you talked about the significant reinvestment that needs to be made. You need to align the organization, design, capabilities, and training. I think there's a role in helping that and bringing it to fruition with this audience out there. There's a lot that you did talk about, the target of 2028, certainly a challenging time, as I said before, challenging in a lot of ways, but we're confident with your leadership and the Army leadership that we're going to get to where we need to be in a timely manner. So again, thank you very much for being here today, sharing your views with us, and thank you for your candor in answering the questions. I knew they were out there, just a little bit shy to start with. Okay. And on your behalf, we're going to make a contribution to the Fisher House Foundation. So thank you again very much. We're now moving into a networking break in the exhibit hall. Lunch today features a discussion between Rear Admiral Bill Chase, the current Deputy Commander of JTF Doden, and Wendell Foster, Joint Force Headquarters Doden's Executive Director. The conversation will be facilitated by one of Admiral Chase's predecessors, Brigadier General retired Paul Fredenberg. After lunch, we'll have one more opportunity to visit the exhibit hall during the dessert break provided by Dell Technologies. You can see the rest of today's program on the app out there. So thank you very much for your attention this morning. And please clear the room as quickly as possible so they can set up for the luncheon. Again, thank you all very much.
Thank you for attending this morning's keynote. Please clear the room quickly so that the catering staff may prepare for today's lunch.
I recognize you. What are you doing now?
I'm looking for lunch. Okay. I did your card, so.